So welcome, Kyra. So how do I say your last name again?
It's Anzely.
Anzely. Italian?
It's Austrian.
Austrian, that's right.
Yeah.
You're I did that. I met you through, I got introduced with you through Jason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he mentioned, I was in the change room with him. It sounds pretty bad, but I was in the change room. I was talking about this sort of stuff, the podcast, and then you came up and what you do for a living.
Mm.
So you're now approved, is it, to work with psychedelic treatment?
Yeah. So I'm a psychedelic-assisted therapist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And how did that happen? How did that come of that? Like,
Oh,
tell us.
wow.
So to get into that, because I do believe it's a good topic now with psychedelics. Mm-hmm. I'm getting used to this, Nick. It's so different. New studio number 2 here at Better Media. I'm interested in that sort of field because, like, where do you start? Like, it's obviously coming out now. There is been approval, but it's through the hospital that you were saying. Was that right? So you can do those sort of treatment in the hospital?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Australia are really lucky, Dan. We are one of the first countries in the world to legalise MDMA and psilocybin. So MDMA is approved by the TGA for treatment-resistant PTSD.
Yeah.
And psilocybin is approved for treatment-resistant depression. And yeah, so some hospital settings around Australia, we've got one here in Sydney, are utilising these treatments in a therapeutic or clinical setting to work with people who have been struggling for so long, who essentially now have treatment-resistant depression or PTSD. They're using these medicines in a safe and controlled environment to support people in their healing process.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So instead of going the prescription drug way.
Yeah, so that's essentially what treatment-resistant means. So if you have been diagnosed with depression and you've been given a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, an antidepressant essentially, and that's what your treatment plan has been, and eventually your body becomes, I guess, your tolerance builds up and you continue to take it, but your depression is not easing, you could then try another one, or you could try a different modality like psychotherapy and pharmacology combined. But eventually, if those treatments aren't working, then essentially you will become treatment resistant. And that's what a lot of people are finding. So I look at depression as being a little bit different to the way that our medical world is kind of looking at it. So and I think this kind of correlates with the way psilocybin works as part of it. So if you have depression, there are some theories that depression is a result of a lack of serotonin in the brain. But those theories have actually been debunked because it's not just a lack of serotonin in the brain. There are a lot of components that come into depression. And one of those is our feelings. Okay, so if we grew up in an environment where it wasn't safe to express our feelings, or it wasn't normalized to express our feelings, or our parents didn't have capacity to hold space for our feelings, what we might learn to do is to suppress them. And I think as a society, we're really fucking good at suppressing our feelings.
That's what we get taught to do.
Yeah. And it comes down to survival, right? So we've got two needs as children. One is to attach to our caregivers. That attachment need is huge. It's survival. And we also have the need to be authentic, to authentic to our needs and our expressing what it is that's on our mind and what we're feeling. But when that battle between attachment and authenticity is present in childhood, we are always going to suppress our authenticity and our feelings and emotions over the attachment, because our attachment trumps our need to be authentic to ourselves. So that's where things like depression can come in, because we've learned as an adaptation to survive to push down our feelings. And that's what the word depress means. It means to push down.
Wow.
And so in the context of mental health and emotions, we're pushing down our feelings. We're not feeling.
Yeah.
And so I think, it's not the case of we've got to start to feel better. I think it's the other way around. We've got to get better at feeling our emotions. And that's what psychedelics can help us do. Psilocybin is very somatic. It helps us connect to our emotions and our feelings so our body can process and release them.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it helps with neuroplasticity. And so what I mean by that is when we're depressed, we're really stuck in these really rigid ways, and our brain is kind of telling us that this is the way, this is the only way. We can't really see out much. We have low motivation. We're kind of stuck, essentially. Everything's fucked, The world feels heavy in a horrible place. We don't have much room for other possibilities. But if you look at brain scans with psilocybin treatment before and after, psilocybin has this amazing way of helping our brain to create new neural pathways so we can begin to see other possibilities and what is possible beyond where we currently are, and it gives me goosebumps.
Yeah. That's the best. That's yeah, see, wow. And that's like that takes you for you knowing that you've obviously experienced it yourself, Go back to how you were raised or, because a lot of people wouldn't understand what you're talking about. You know, it's like sometimes you have to go through that to learn how to express your feelings, Because I've been told as well, like you're emotional, you're too emotional in the past, And you sort of go, you suppress it. Mm-hmm. You get knocked down, you suppress it, And then how does it come out? Anger, comes out through your body as well. Like we were talking about the other week when we caught up, like
manifest through
nerve
the body.
damage and all that sort of stuff. So these treatments they're managed obviously through professionals.
Of course, yeah.
And it allows you to express. Is that what the psychedelics do?
For some people, yeah. And every experience is different, Dan. So you might have a very different experience, and that's part of the role as a psychedelic-assisted therapist is to explain that and help people understand that, for me, that's my personal experience. And coming back to, I'm very expressive as well, and I'm a very emotional person. That's just who I am, and I've been suppressed in the past too. But so for me, psilocybin is very somatic, but for you, it could be very visual. You could hear different things, or you could connect into your intuition more, or you might actually not have much of an experience at all. It's very individualized. But I think with psychedelics, it's you don't necessarily get what you want, more what you need out of that experience.
Yeah. So sort of it teaches you Mother Earth.
Yeah, well, you can connect with Mother Earth if you like.
Well, that's where it comes from, really. That's why. Yeah. So why is it now coming out? Why is it coming back?
I think there's been a lot of research over the past, goodness me, like decades. I think it was criminalized back in the 60s when there was a big psychedelic, I guess. Psychedelics were huge back then, right? And we were in this renaissance period because I think from the research that I've done back in the 60s, it was criminalized. This is my perspective, is that psychedelics allow us to connect and expand our consciousness, right? So we open our mind up to different possibilities, and we're connecting. We're actually in an altered state of consciousness. Now, when we expand and we evolve as humans, we're harder to control.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I think for a long time it's been criminalized because, people like governments and things like that, it's easier for them to control us when we're not expanded and evolving and in those different expanded states. That's my perception. I think also too, the research speaks for itself, and it's really hard to argue with the research that's out there on the impacts and the benefits of what these medicines are doing. It's really hard to go against what's there in its science, right? Yeah. And I think as well before, it was not studied as much in the context of mental health. So, the guy who found acid. Like, that was by accident. You know, he was in his little lab and it seeped through his fingers. And then he's riding home and he's tripping out, right? So he wasn't trying to find it. It's the same as the more organic psychedelics, the ones like ayahuasca and iboga that are found in Africa is the ibogan root bark, and ayahuasca is the plant, the vine in the Amazon. When I think about those and their origins, they were actually found by the people in those societies. It's said that iboga was found by accident. Someone ate a porcupine that was eating the iboga, and then they came back to the tribe and they were sharing all of this wisdom. And the chief of the tribe was like, what is going on? Like, where did this come from? Why is this person having all of these insights and sharing all of this wisdom? And they were in a different state of consciousness. And so they discovered that it was from this root bark.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was the story of iboga. And ayahuasca, it's crazy that out of all of the thousands of plants in the Amazon, these people have been able to identify that this vine combined with something else has been able to help them connect to the cosmos and other universal realms and themselves, and it's got a lot of healing properties. So, you know, I guess as well for those respects, they're coming through now into our Western world. We're starting to see more of that, but these guys have been operating for thousands of years. They just operate in different ways, and I think for a lot of people, Dan, their minds have not been expanded enough to be able to grasp these concepts. But I think now we're in this really beautiful period where people are starting to tune into these things and different modalities that can support them in their growth, development, and healing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude. Yeah. What a different world, man. I'm spun out. No, like, is it like, there's so much that, it's like, this is what takes me back to, like, the religion side of things, you know, mushroom and stuff. You know, when they're sort of connected, psychedelic wine, I've sort of discussed this before, you know, seeing, like, they used to make that stuff, mushroom. They used to put mushroom in wine and beer. Like, it's come from, they used to think that it was the God's gift. I think I told you, sperm.
There is,
from heavens, and they, you know, it grew and they, you know, and takes you, you know, takes your DMT and stuff as well. So as treatment, see, instead of, I know children's too young for this, but for adults, a lot of people are going to, like, Peru, doing ayahuasca, coming back and stopping addictions and, you know, apologising to people and all this sort of stuff. You know, is it legit? People get stuck in that realm as well, don't they? If they take too much, they abuse it. This is probably why the government wants to control it a bit.
Well, I think, Dan, it's around intention, and I think I'm really big on intention setting. So I think there is a lot of spiritual bypassing that occurs in the community, that we think that if we go to the jungle and we have this special drink, we're going to drink it and everything's going to be fixed. Well, I'm a big believer that that's not the case. I really believe in preparation. And so for me, for people clients of mine who might come to me and say, I want to go and do ayahuasca, I'd look and assess if they are ready. So first of all, about, you know, their ability to hold space for themselves, to connect in with their feelings, to know what it is that they want to get out of the psychedelic experience, to have the ability and the skills and the resources to hold themselves after that, right? I don't think that it's wise to just go to the jungle and just take a drink and hope for the best. I think it's about that preparation and knowing where you're going as well, like following your intuition and your own inner guidance to know if that's the right thing for you, doing your research, right? And then it's about integration. And I think the integration period, Dan, is so important. Because there's no quick fixes in life with anything. And I think that the psychedelic experience can only get you so far. It's what you do with that that's the most important thing. So the psychedelic experience, it's just like therapy. It goes for this amount of time. But then you've got the rest of your life to be able to integrate the things that you learned or unlearn the things that have come through and adapt that into your life. Yeah. And that's where the magic lies.
So it's the work up to that. Like, find your inner self, like do the work on yourself first as well.
100%.
Don't go there in a negative thought, think it's going to cure all the dark thoughts. Like, go there ready for it to take the ride, right? Because a lot of people fight it. That's probably why they get stuck in there, I guess, if they're not mindsets ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just on that, I think it's also about connecting with our own inner self, and if sometimes we're not ready for that, sometimes we need to work up to that. And if someone has severe mental health disorders, like there are contraindications for this work, and this is why safety is really important and setting. I wouldn't just recommend anybody just go to an overseas place. I would absolutely recommend them to do their research. But for here in Australia, if you do have schizophrenia or bipolar or severe mental health disorders, unfortunately, that is a contraindication, which says that you're not able to engage in these therapies because, yes, they can heighten your symptoms. And we don't want that for anybody. Why would we want to create more unease and more suffering? And that's just what we've found. So the case is there that those people would be screened out and have to find different modalities. Yeah.
Well, and they'd like for you to get to this point, to know so much and give back. Like, you're so interested in this, right? This is obviously why you studied it.
Yeah.
So are you doing a job now on this? Are you working, or are you hoping to work?
I've only just finished my psychedelic-assisted course with CPAT with Mind Medicine Australia. I'm not, unfortunately, working yet. I would love to in the future. I've done a lot of work on myself, which I think is also key and integral here, and that's what I would also recommend to anybody wanting to reach out or go down the psychedelic path. What I mean by that is the psychedelic path of healing. And this is the shamanistic way as well. So where I'm at the moment is I'm about to step into that space of supporting others after I've done the work on myself. And this kind of goes back to the concept of like wounded healers. When I first stepped into the, I guess, path of a therapist, or in human services, I've always been in human services, I was very wounded, and I was coming from a place of I wanted to save everybody and I wanted to fix everybody because I never wanted anybody to feel the way that I'd felt. But I was just projecting all of my unhealed shit out onto other people, right? I was doing that from a place not of being selfish, but I was doing it to seek validation through that. So if I can make people feel better, that will make me feel better, right? I'll feel validated through that. And I wasn't doing that consciously. I was doing that subconsciously. And so what I've done in my journey is I've gone into all of that to understand all of that and unraveled all of that. And I think that's very important when finding a psychedelic-assisted therapist, I believe, someone who's done the work. Because you can also only take someone as far as you've been yourself. And what I mean by that is I'm not discounting anybody who hasn't done work on themselves, but before I'd done this work, I wouldn't be able to understand my clients, where they're coming from. I wouldn't be able to feel comfortable holding space. 10 years ago, if someone cried in front of me, I'd get really sad. That would make me incredibly sad. And I cannot hold space for somebody if I'm blubbering with them, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So I've had to be able to work through my own shit to hold space for myself, so I have capacity to hold them in all of their emotions, everything that they're showing up for me. Because this work is not easy.
No, it's not. It's tiring for you too, mentally and physically.
Yeah, and people go through, not that I've sat in as a facilitator, but I've done a lot of training in it. People can go through some very difficult experiences. And so I think it's really important that the psychedelic assisted therapist is very aware of their own emotions, because we're not robots, right?
Yeah, of course.
So if someone for instance, our own fears could be triggered through somebody else's experience. Again, why it's important for us to do our own work. So because if someone's presenting and they're thinking that they're dying, or they're seeing something, or they're really scared, their nervous system is dysregulated. That could create huge dysregulation within me, right? But what good am I to them if I'm going to be going into a panic and going into becoming an anxious mess? I need to be able to work through my own shit first to be a calm and steady, grounded person for them to help them navigate their way through that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be there, haven't you?
Yeah. So
you got to protect them that way.
Yeah, you got to support them and hold space so they can work through it, and that's also an important part of psychedelic assisted therapy. It's very it's not about it's about holding space for them, but it's not about jumping in there and fixing and supporting. It's about supporting them to do that themselves. Mm. And that's what I think as well, when you embody that as well. Like a lot of healers think that, I'm healing you. And that's not the case for me. I don't think that a medicine can heal somebody, or the modalities that I use, which we might talk about later, the somatic modalities that I use are me healing somebody. It's more about me supporting someone to tap into their own innate wisdom and abilities to heal themselves. And that's empowering, right?
Yeah, you guide them. So that's why you pick up their energy too, wouldn't you? Like
yeah.
Negative. You got to be cleared yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what is that to go also that healing you do as well, the energy?
The spinal energetics, yeah.
That's got to do with it too, obviously. Like that's on a different level.
Yeah. So, and that's what I was referring to. Yeah. So spinal energetics is a modality that Dr. Sarah Jane in Melbourne. She's a chiropractor. She's also a counsellor. She's got a lot of experience and training. She has put together, it's a blend of like Reiki, it's a blend of polyvagal theory. And so for those who don't know what polyvagal theory is, it's essentially there's a lot of research into when animals go into a state of fight or flight, and their cortisol and adrenaline increases in the body, they have the fight in the wild and they go off and they shake the stress off. And so what we don't do as humans is do that enough, because our society is not...
you can't show it.
Yeah, it's not accustomed, I guess, to...
welcoming, is it?
Yeah, it'd be a bit weird, but it's starting to come out more. But so what spinal energetics allows us to do is to tap into the energetic field and to tap into the emotions and the tension patterns and the trauma and stress that's trapped in the body, because let's be real, like those things are felt in the system. They are not just up in our mind like our Western mental health model seems to depict or think. And so it's working again with the body's innate wisdom, and it's being able to identify the tension patterns in the body and where someone carries their stress and trauma, and helping the body to process that and release that, just kind of like the animals who are shaking off the stress.
You helping to shake it off.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's one of the ways in which the body might want to, we sometimes see a trauma shake in spinal energetics, or it might be an emotional release, such as crying or screaming. You might see someone who's quite still, because, for instance, their body might feel like it's not safe to express. So we've got to work really slowly with that person's body to be able to connect the mind-body and help them to feel safe enough to express.
And that's what happened to you. You went through that. I saw that. So how long did that take you? It took you, 5 times, or like to get to that level of letting that trauma out? Through that energy massage? Like, is it I watched it, look good. It was real. Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like a little bit of an exorcism sort of
thing. Yeah, and there is. And people look at that and they don't understand it. Yeah, and neither did I when I first started. And it's not massage. It's more just connecting to the sensations in the body and the energy, because, our bodies hold energy, right? And so what I was working through there was a sense that was on my... I think it was my root chakra, the one you're talking about. And that was my sense of safety. And this feeds back in my external sense of safety. And this feeds back into my story that you're referring to. So for my life and a lot of my early childhood and teen years, I didn't feel safe. There were lots of threats going on, and I had anxiety and OCD. And that was a big release. And this is the beauty of spinal energetics too, and I think what appeals to a lot of people, and for me too. You don't actually know what it is that you're releasing. For me, I know because I've studied the modality. And I had this little inner knowing that it felt like sadness and fear, the feeling that I was connecting into, but I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know the story that it was attached to. I didn't have any memory become apparent to me. I just knew that there was a lot of fear being released in that particular time that you're referring to.
Yeah.
And so what that's allowed me to do, now that I've been able to release that and work on that over a long period of time, is start to feel a sense of safety in the world again, to be able to trust my surroundings, which what happens then, my body was actually, my chiropractor had told me at the time that she'd done x-rays and the structure, you know how when like a dog is scared and they cower and they're down and their tail goes under their legs, like my spine had started to do that. Yeah. And so what that has enabled me to do is to open myself up, and my posture has changed because I'm not scared anymore.
Yeah. The body shows, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm more open now, and I'm trusting, which means that I've been able to tap into my confidence and I've been able to connect to the world more. And so this has been, just part of my story around what spinal energetics has helped me to be able to achieve.
And going back to when you said you were young, not feeling safe as well. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because I know you mentioned that. It's interesting. So yeah, you said your father was a nice addict, was he? Or
my dad, bless his soul, was addicted to amphetamines. And that wasn't, in my early childhood, my mum and dad, what I perceived, and this is again, trauma is all based on perception and experience. Trauma is not what happened to you. It's what happened inside of you as a result of what happened to you. So what I mean by that is my trauma started, and my understanding is not when my dad started using substances, but when my dad left my mum, the relationship.
And how old were you?
I was 8. And so I didn't understand, and these children don't understand, Dan, that mummy and daddy are having problems and so daddy's leaving the relationship. That's not how a child will interpret things, right? They will often, more often than not, interpret it as being something about themselves. So my experience of the trauma, it's not just that dad left, it's that something must be wrong with me. If my daddy's leaving, it must be me. I mustn't be good enough. I mustn't be worthy. And that's the story that I carried for a really, really long time. And that abandonment wound, that sense of rejection showed up in every single relationship since then. So my narrative of the world became that, well, if my dad's not there for me and I'm unworthy, I must find somebody who will make me feel worthy. And so I developed what we call is as anxious attachment. As therapists, that's attachment theory. And so I became very anxious in the world and needed attachment to help me through in relationships. And when I perceived any sense of rejection in a relationship, I'd become very anxious and act in ways, and my maladaptive coping mechanisms would come out, such as protesting for them to understand what I meant, or begging them and bidding for them to come back and connect to me and not leave. It was all just centered around staying with me, right?
Separations, anxiety, sort of.
Yeah, and that really anxious attachment. It's like I needed them to survive, to connect, because what was happening there, and this is like inner child work, and I've done a lot of this too, and I love inner child work. I love doing it with my clients as well. My inner child was ruling the roost because I was operating from a place of woundedness according to the wounds that happened when I was a child. So in order to work on my anxious attachment and to improve my relationships, I had to go back to the core of it. And I'm a huge fan of working on the core issue, right? I had to go back and heal that little girl because the pain belonged to her. The pain belonged to that little girl who felt abandoned, perceived she was abandoned by her dad when she was little. And the drugs were just another part of that. I lost my dad as I knew him. He wasn't on drugs when he was with my mum, but he used drugs to cope with the pain of losing his family. Wow. And that's what addiction is, right? It's a response to human suffering. It's not a disease. It's not a conscious choice that we make. I've never met, in my work in addiction, Dan, I've never met a person who said, I just really love taking heroin.
Yeah.
I mean, well, some of them do because it takes the pain away, right? They don't just want to do it for no reason. Yeah. And that's what my dad was doing. He was just trying to suppress his pain in the only way that he knew how, because he too wasn't supported as a child to manage his emotions. And he too has abandonment wounds and rejection wounds.
He's done it.
Yeah.
It's like wow.
Yeah.
How do you stop that chain?
Well, I think, and this is what I would say to anybody who is doing the work, I think it's about becoming aware of it, becoming aware of these instances and understanding, and coming from a place of curiosity is hugely important in the work that I do with my clients. So it's about looking through things, not what's wrong with me. That's very judgmental, right? That's very critical. It's what happened to me. That's more curious, and then can come with compassion, right? Like compassion to self. So for me, for most of my life, I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Why am I so dependent on men? Why do I go for men who are, emotionally unavailable? Why do I go for men who can't show up and meet my needs? Why do I go for men who hurt me or abuse me? What's wrong with me? There must be something wrong with me, right? Because I'm the common denominator. That's the right word here. So what's wrong with me? Why? And there must be something defective with me or my perception or my judgment. Well, no, when I started to look at it, it was like, what happened to me? My childhood experiences shaped my future. They set up the blueprint, and that's what happens, right, as a child. Our relationships show us and teach us how we interact with others in the world. And so all I was doing was just trying to find somebody, because I had such low self-worth and low self-esteem, I was trying to find somebody to fill that void and to make me feel better. And that only came through from a place of curiosity and non-judgment. The more I judged myself, the worse I felt. But the minute that I started being compassionate and curious about it, I started to find the answers. If I sit here and say to you, Dan, why the fuck are you doing this to yourself? Why the fuck? You're not going to be very open and receptive, are you?
It's horrible.
Yeah, it's awful. But that's
Made me feel like she'd even given that as an example.
Exactly, yeah.
Those words, it's horrible, yeah.
And it's proven, that the nervous system responds to threats, and the threat response stays on. And we're never going to be relaxed and open and receptive to wanting to answer those questions when we're coming from a place of judgment and criticism. And so, what was happening for me is I was just seeking out men who mirrored my father, because he was emotionally unavailable. Yeah. And not by choice, is because he'd had his own trauma and it was passed down, and his way of coping was to shut down emotionally.
And a guy would just say, you got daddy issues. And that's it.
Yeah.
Typecast.
Yeah.
But like, that's the thing. Like, so for you to accept that, that's the first step, accepting it, right? And go doing the work on yourself.
Yeah, becoming aware. Yeah. And then that's where the work is, Dan. It's like, now what do I do with this? And that's the hard thing where people struggle. They're aware of it, because that can also be really frustrating too, that I know this is happening, but why can't I change it? And that's where things like spinal energetics or somatics or psychedelics or whatever these alternative therapies that we're starting to use, and the ones that I use, that I've used on myself, because they've been able to tap into the underlying drivers. Yes, it builds the awareness, but it also enables me to then start to process those experiences and be able to release them so they no longer have a hold on me. Because every experience, I had a story, that the one where my dad had abandoned me, that was my perception. That story meant I wasn't good enough. Or every time my mum was stressed out, or she said, go away, leave me alone, I'm too busy, bless her, because she's so busy in the home, I perceived that as I'm too much, right? There's always these core belief systems.
Don't you? Put it on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, it's interesting you say that now. Like me being a parent myself. Well, you have kids. You have a child. That's right. I forgot.
Not so much a child anymore. He's 17 yesterday.
17?
Yeah.
Because you had him. How old were you?
I was 17 when I had him.
17.
Yeah. Yep.
So that would have been tough as well, right?
Yeah.
Trying to work yourself out like at that age, or I
Yeah.
have a child too, see.
Yeah. My boy is the most, he's been the most chilled, placid, easygoing child. I'm truly blessed with that boy. He is just, like most parents, like the apple of my eye. Like he's just the most beautiful boy. But I think what's been beautiful about our journey is that we have grown together. And it's always just been him and I, So I think for me, yes, it was tough, and I'm not trying to polish it up or sugarcoat it, but I think for me, Caleb has been, he's more of a child who's been able to help teach me and grow, so everything that he's presented to me, and it's not really much because he's a pretty chill kid. He doesn't have that many issues, I guess, that present to me and make me really stressed out and make it really challenging. But everything that has happened has been an opportunity for me to reflect as a parent, And I think for me, the greatest gift that I can give him is my own happiness. So that's why I put so much emphasis on my personal growth and development, because I think first and foremost, and this goes back to me talking about my experiences and everyone's experience as a child, if our parents are stressed out or our parents don't feel happy or they're depressed or they're anxious, that's going to be coming out to their children, right? So that's why I'm such a huge fan of working on ourselves as parents, because then the more we work through our shit, the more grounded and calm we are, the less stressed we are, the better we can show up for our children. They're going to get a better version of us, and they're not going to interpret our shit as being about them.
Cut the chain.
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I guess so.
Well, that's all we can do, isn't it? Work on yourself and
Yeah.
pass it on, and don't pass that crap onto them. Because people do.
Oh, yeah.
A lot. And I see it, and it's horrible, And then they pass it on. They have their problems, and it just keeps going.
Intergenerational trauma, yeah. And I don't think, Dan, that people do it intentionally.
No, they're not. They're not awake of it because they haven't. I look back, obviously, the last 7 years, 5 years especially, learned a lot. And you sort of go back. You analyse how you were.
Yeah, reflect. Yeah.
And if I get frustrated at home with my kids, which I don't really, is my injury, carrying things around the house. It wasn't at them. It was just I was frustrated.
Yeah.
And I explained to them, well, I'm frustrated.
Yeah.
So it's like they can walk away and not feel it's about them,
Exactly. Yeah.
Just explain it to them.
Yeah. And that's something that I didn't do as a parent. That's beautiful that you do that.
You were young. You wouldn't have known, and you were like 17.
Yeah.
Still blossoming.
Yeah, of course.
And it's, the world hasn't damaged you as much yet. Well, you had a different upbringing. But once you leave the nest, the world throws a lot of stuff at you, and you got to be prepared.
Well, yeah, I was actually homeless with my son when he was 2, and that was a really tough time. We didn't have anywhere to go, and I was actually using substances myself, the very thing that created so much turmoil in my own childhood. And this is, again, addiction. There's no gene that carries addiction. Why it's passed down is because the pain that we often experience as a child, we learn that maybe substances might help us to numb that pain as well. And that was a huge area of shame for me, because I had experienced such exposure to substance use as a child. And not that I exposed my son to my substance use, but he was exposed to a mother who was using substances, so she was heavily disconnected.
Yeah.
And that was something that I had to work through. Because I wasn't as present sometimes as what I should be, or I wasn't as patient at times as what I could be. And so while I was in denial at the time, and I thought, this is an impact in my son because I'm not doing anything in front of him, and he had no idea, and I sheltered him from it, and I didn't use substances directly around him. I would take him to my parents' place or somewhere and use substances with my friends elsewhere. But when the after effects he got, right? And
come downs.
Yeah. And I think that's an area that I look back and think I used to judge myself and feel a lot of intense guilt and shame around that. And the difference between guilt is you feel bad about something and that's a bad decision that you made, but the shame came in because The difference there is that it made me feel like a bad person. And so I felt like I had let my son down. And it was even harder because I had also experienced that as a child, and I thought, oh my God, how could I do that? And even though I only did it for a short period of time, there was this intense amount of shame that I was stuck in, which then created a spiral of emotions that wanted me, that made me feel like I wanted to use more, and that comes back to that self-compassion. And so again, I had to, and this is what I do with my clients as well, and not just learn through the work that I've done at university and all of the research and study that I've done, but also the study on myself, is that the substance is not the problem, Dan. That's the attempt to solve the problem. The problem, you don't have an addiction problem, you have a pain problem. That's the core of the addiction. So when we can work on the core of the addiction, that's when we won't need whatever it is that we're using to help suppress the pain.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's not the gun, it's the guy who shot it. Right?
Yeah, kind of, if you want to use that analogy. Yeah.
Well, it's like, well, you can't, what is a good tradesman doesn't blame his tools. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's the same thing, you got to go back to yourself. Don't blame the tool or the product.
Yeah, we're just using it. And addiction doesn't come out, in just substances. I was also addicted to food. Because when I was little, Dad didn't have the capacity to hold space for me, and he was doing whatever he was doing. So he would say, here's some money. And so what does a 9-year-old little girl do with money who just really wants to connect with her daddy? She goes and buys food. Yeah. And so I'm buying food to help, to comfort me, to numb my pain. And so then now you've got an eating disorder.
Yeah. Wow. It's amazing how it works, isn't it? Yeah.
How it manifests, yeah.
It's the patterns, isn't it?
A lot of our mental health issues, I strongly believe, and I'm not alone in this. A lot of my colleagues and, peers in the industry believe that a lot of these mental health disorders are grounded in trauma and attachment from when we were younger.
Wow, and that's what you work with.
Yeah,
I know we spoke about this before, ADHD.
Yes, yeah.
What's your intake? What's your take of that? Because that's big now. Mm-hmm. Everyone's got it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's rising.
People tell me I have it. I'm like, okay, maybe. Mm-hmm. I don't see it as a thing. I just see it as, I don't know, a little bit out there more than most people. It's just if you can control those thoughts, you don't have filters. Mm-hmm. When you're younger, you learn to put filters on. Civilization, in a way, the mask. Yeah. Or control your thoughts. But now the tablets coming out are sort of not allowing these kids to express themselves, so they're being on the prescribed medication. Mm-hmm. So what is that? Is it can relate to trauma, like you mentioned, I think before, about ADHD?
There is a huge correlation, and there's so much that we could talk about here. So look, ADHD is a collection of symptoms, right? Essentially symptoms and signs in the body. And while there are genes that make people more, susceptible or more vulnerable to developing ADHD, from my understanding, not all of those people who have those genes have ADHD. So I think there are genetic factors, Dan, but I also think there are environmental factors as well when we think about ADHD. And so when you think about those signs and symptoms, many of those are adaptations to our environment. And what I mean by that is, so when you're little and you're, for instance, say, well, let's take about me, who used to have a lot of signs and symptoms of ADHD. And my parents were stressed out, right? And so what might be something that I might try to do if my environment is stressful? For one, I might try to, or my boundaries are being violated, or I can't get my needs met. I might start to fight back and protest and say, I need my needs met. I want my needs met, or I don't like this, or try to set boundaries. I might go into a bit of a fight response, right? Because that's my first response to, maybe it's my first response to stress. Or I might try and run away and escape the stress, to try and get away from it, to try and preserve myself. So those are fight or flight, right? Or I might go into a freeze response. And this is sort of where ADHD symptoms can sometimes arise. So when we talk about like a scattered mind or the tuning out, which are those signs and symptoms of ADHD, That
What'd you say?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's an adaptation. Why does the brain become dissociate or disconnect or become scattered? Well, when we look at the environment that it's in, maybe that's adaptive to the environment. If you're growing up in a home that's stressful, or we could have unresolved mental health or trauma or domestic violence or substance use or all of them, how does a child survive in that environment?
Yeah, so much going on. No structure.
Yeah. And think about the brain and the development of the brain, and we look at ADHD and we look at impulse control. When we're born, we aren't born with impulse control. Our brain develops to help support us in the development of that, right? Well, babies aren't born with impulse control. They don't learn when they have a wet nappy or they're hungry that mum and dad are busy, that they can't tend to my needs. The baby just cries, right? Because they don't have impulse control. And so impulse control is another symptom of ADHD, which can also be, attributed to those developmental milestones that haven't been achieved given the environment, because the child hasn't learned strong impulse control. When we look at hyperactivity, we have to look at anxiousness and our nervous system. Why might our body be hyperactive? That could be, again, a response to our environment. Mm. So I think it's really important that when we look at ADHD, I like to look at it from a holistic perspective and not just go down the route of just a medication. I think it's really important to look at that child or that person's environment as well, and look at what's going on in that environment.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that goes back to the household. Like if you have a child like that, or a few children, put some nice music on, light some candles, change the environment. I don't know, change your calm your emotions down so you don't reflect it, I guess. So people just give them tablets, don't they, really, just to suppress it and step the parents in,
Well, that
it's
also...
tough work to do it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's easy to be a parent,
No.
It's so hard. I mean, for me, though, that's where I can't relate fully to a lot of my clients and parents. So they're like, it's so hard. And this is why I say Caleb's a blessing, because he wasn't like that. You didn't really hear a peep out of him. He was really creative, and he would go and play his toys, and we just play together, and he wasn't demanding, and he didn't have any of these issues. But I have worked with children for a long time. I worked in out-of-home care for 10 years with some of the most traumatized, children that I've ever come across. And so I can see from an outside perspective how difficult parenting can be. Oh, yeah. But I think that's why it's so important to do the work on ourselves, because what became difficult for me as a parent is when I was dysregulated. So as my son became a teenager and started to find his own voice, and he wasn't playing with his little dragons in the corner anymore, he's starting to go out and push the boundaries, that's when it became difficult for me.
Yeah, it's like little adults coming. Yeah. Try two of them at the same time.
Yeah, and I'm like, why won't you just shower when I say, hey, mate, can you have a shower? He's like, no. Well, that's really healthy for him, right? Because it's about that understanding that for him, according to his age and development, he's finding his voice. He's pushing back. That's what he's supposed to do. But for parents who haven't, really got much ability to self-reflect, or the ability to be able to understand themselves or the way they were raised, might then come down with more force, which is what I was trying to do, which was actually pushing my son away further and making him dig his heels in more. Because he was like, no, fuck you, Mum. Yeah. I'm not doing it outright. And so the more work that I did in myself, the more I was able to look at myself and think, well, why is this bothering me? This was triggering me because he wasn't listening. So this was triggering a part of me, right, as a parent. So there was more work for me to do. So the more work I've done on myself, the more I understand myself, the calmer that my nervous system is, the stronger ability I have to show up for my son. Because now when he does those things, I'm so aware of myself and my reactions, I don't respond that way anymore. And so now he just has a shower because it doesn't get a response out of me. Yeah. He doesn't have to push back because I'm just more chilled, and he can have he can have a shower when he wants to. Really, what does it really matter?
That's right.
If he has a shower
At that
now or
age.
in 10 minutes.
That's
you
right.
know?
And that's what you got to work on.
Exactly. That was my own shit. And that can translate to so many different, parenting aspects. And I always say to my clients, it's connection before correction. And what I mean by that is a lot of parents will try to just dictate to their children, and they have to listen because they're the child. Well, I say to those parents, do you like to be treated that way, for starters? Yeah. If someone just comes into you and starts telling you what to do and throwing you orders, do you listen? Probably not. But if you have someone who you're really connected to and you feel really safe with and you have a lot of respect for that person, you're more inclined to listen to them and to follow their lead, right? And that's where, the word discipline comes from. It's not to punish, that's very punitive. It's to lead and to guide. And that's what I say to a lot of my parents, you've got to build that trust and safety and connection with your child first before they're going to listen and follow in your direction. And that's what I think is a beautiful thing about parenting. Again, coming back to understanding yourself first, connecting with yourself first, knowing who you are at your core, and then being able to show up as that person with your child to fully connect. And that's what I really encourage all of my parent clients to do, is to hold on to their children, hold closely to them, just create safety and connection. Because now I'm in a place where my son originally was not telling me anything when he first became a teenager, because I was yelling at him. Well, not yelling, but rousing at him, going, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? You cannot do that. And coming from a place of fear.
Yeah, what age is that?
Around 13, 14.
Yeah, okay. My son's getting there.
Yeah. And all of this stuff was, and most parents don't realize we do it out of love, but it pushes our children away.
Yeah. It's like the clay headbutt.
Yeah, we're wanting to protect them. No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that because everything's bad. I want to protect you. Yeah. But that was my own fear. I didn't want him to fall into patterns that I had fallen into. I didn't want him to go down the same path, right? So I'm trying so hard to protect him, but what I'm doing is pushing him away because I'm not allowing him to do these things, and I'm not coming to him from a place of curiosity again. I'm not coming to him from a place of wanting to connect and understand where he's at. So Caleb, you have that vape. No, you can't have that vape. That's bad. That's horrible. Yep. I'm going to do it anyway, Mum.
Yeah, there you go. He's honest. He was honest. Yeah.
No, he wasn't honest. He was like,
his
his actions were like, I'm doing it anyway, right?
Okay,
I'm going to do it behind your back. Stuff you. I'm not listening. So what good is that now? Now I've broken, his trust. He can't come to me anymore because he feels like I'm just going to yell at him and rouse on him and just come down hard. And so he still wants this thing that everyone else is doing, all of his mates are doing. So he's just going to go away and do it when I'm not there. And so how have I helped him there? I haven't. Yeah. I've just done him an injustice. All right, Kyra, change your process here. What can you do differently? Let's go with curiosity and say, hey, mate, what is it that you're getting out of that? And for most people, smoking, any kind of substance or vape, it's the breathing. And I'm a huge fan of breath work as well, right? So breath work is so powerful because if you can change your breath, you can change your state of being, your emotions, right? When we become stressed and anxious, we're shortness of breath. But if we can engage in controlled, more regulated breathing, we can activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is that rest and reset, the vagus nerve. And so we can do that quite easily with our breathing. And I do a lot of breath work with my clients and with myself. I did one on the way here. It's really magical.
Traffic.
Yeah, I did.
Coming from Newcastle, up the coast. Yeah.
And so I was curious with him. Why, Caleb, are you wanting to vape? And he couldn't answer me at the start because, he's a teenager. And lucky for me, I do have some skills to be able to delve a little bit deeper. And so it was really, he just wanted to vape to, sometimes to take a breath, to de-stress. So it's like, okay, great. Thank you so much for telling me. How can we do that in a different way that doesn't involve sucking on a toxic chemical?
30 plus chemicals.
Yeah. How many chemicals? Yeah. And so that's when we can start to shift what's happening here, right? And it's the same with anything that he's doing as a teenager. And it comes back to that thing around addiction. It's not about the thing that he's using. It's about what purpose that it's serving. And so that's a lot of the work that I do with my clients as well.
Getting thinking.
Yeah. How can we meet that need in a way that's harm reduction, right? How can we meet that need in a way that isn't as harmful to you? Because we still want to meet that need. If someone's using substances to cope, to manage their sense of loneliness, well, how can we support you in your loneliness that doesn't involve a harmful drug to you? Or how can we reduce that harm to you?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Geez, a lot of information today.
Yeah.
Hey, Nicholas, how you going over there? Mate, this is beautiful. I know you got another one. Jeez, we've got on for an hour. That's great. I can listen to you. Yeah, okay. So this is good. This is what people need to hear. It's not just about psychedelics.
No.
That's the I'm interested in that sort of things. But it goes back from what you learned from your upbringing, what you learn about obviously drug use as well, and now you're turning it around and trying to give back.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful. Like, it's so good. And hopefully one day you can work with these psychedelics and have these discussions, or people who are on your, microdosing or however it's approved. There's a doses, right, for mushrooms?
Well, so the research is like, I do think personally for me, microdosing, I've microdosed mushroom psilocybin. So for me, I think we spoke about this, like the research will state that there's no benefit to the current research that we have says there's no benefit to microdosing because the dose is so small, like 0.1 of a gram. So what could possibly change? But for me, I think, and this is again a personal experience, is mushrooms can be quite somatic as well. And so they can help to bring through, for me, it connects me to my emotions on a very subtle way. Connects me to nature as well. So like if I was to microdose, I might feel more connected to my surroundings. But also where it can be helpful microdosing is it can support you to prepare you for a higher dose. So for some people who might be scared to go to psychedelics, people might feel anxious or worried, and heck, I did before I first sat on my first journey. I was petrified. I thought I was going to die. Sometimes microdosing, whether it's psilocybin or, whatever substance that you're taking, can help to prepare you to get the feel of what the medicine feels like in the body. And it can also, microdosing can also be really supportive around the integration period to keep I know for Iboga, when I went to Costa Rica, which was an incredible experience, they recommend to microdose afterwards to keep the spirit of the plant within you. And I believe that to be true, Dan, because when I came back to Australia and I wasn't microdosing anymore, also I wasn't drinking alcohol. It was just before Christmas, and I felt the spirit of the plant. I felt so contented and peaceful and just connected to myself and to life, to nature. And that's one of the Bwiti big principles, is about we're all connected. And I felt that. When I had alcohol at Christmas, I can't remember what I had. I literally that afternoon, I slowly felt that disconnection occurring in my body and in my surroundings. And it was like the spirit of that left. So, there's
that makes sense though. Like, it's like prescribed weed and flower, as they call it. I think it's, I do recommend people, look into this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I really do. I think it'll be a better world. But not like in an abusive way. Do the work on yourself first and reach out, Because we can talk for hours about mushrooms.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
But, where do we go? Like, we could start, to have an introduction into it. So what mushrooms are used, like, to do the microdosing?
Psilocybin.
Psilocybin.
Yeah.
So, because are there different types? That's the only one?
I don't know so much about like the different species.
Yeah.
That's a whole different. There are different species of mushrooms. And yeah, so legally, microdosing is not. I think they've got some clinical trials that have occurred.
Yeah.
But in a legal setting, they don't do microdosing. But there are a lot of people who, like overseas or underground, that might do microdosing as part of their protocol. But currently, legally in Australia, that's not happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, with the psilocybin, with the bigger doses, yeah, that's psilocybin, and I'm not sure that's actually not. That's pharmaceutical grade psilocybin that's being used in the clinics in Australia, in the hospitals. So it's not the actual mushroom. It's a clinical grade psilocybin that's derived from.
Yeah, because I had one, it was a 0.88 it was, I think.
Yeah.
Well, that was the same thing, was it?
I would say that is more of a working dose. Okay. Yeah.
So what's that? The working dose is that you spend a few hours and you be with someone who, and that would become part of the treatment, hopefully in the future.
Perhaps it's not currently, and what I think from my own experience as well with the medicine is that sometimes when someone has like a 3.5 gram dose, which is the standard dose depending on the protocol and the prescriber, the psychiatrist, sometimes that can be a lot to grasp and process. Because we've got to remember, like, we're in a completely different altered state of consciousness, and sometimes people have things like ego dissolution. So I've heard people experiencing an ego death or their complete reality as they knew it that just disintegrated, or they've been confronted with their most horrible fears. So this stuff isn't for the faint-hearted, and sometimes people have this most blissful, beautiful experience as well. I've had both. But I think for some people that can be very destabilizing. And this is why it's important to do the work beforehand, right? And so sometimes, some people who do it, whether it's overseas or wherever, whatever shaman or facilitator you're working with, some will do a smaller working dose. Again, that feeds into that preparing you for a bigger dose if that's what your journey that you want to take. Or it could also be that you just might want to have a little nervous system reset, and you might just want to connect in with yourself and see what comes up from that journey and connect in with the medicine in a more subtle, less out there, extravagant, huge, destabilizing way. There's benefit to both.
It took a few days to sort of realise. I got out of there and I was like, we're just ants. We really aren't we?
Wow.
We're just working the system, The ones who woke up the most, they're looked upon as so I was saying to Nick, like the crazy person on the street is the crazy person on the street. But if you spend time with them, like, it's like they're out there. They're out of the matrix.
Yeah, sure.
They just don't know how to come back. And that's what I think this sort of, whether it was my state of mind, like you said, you can go in there and you take something different out of it. But it was like, the world is a beautiful place, and we just get so busy. Working, making money, having what we want to have,
Wow, that's incredible realization.
Yeah, like I always thought that, but that sort of enhanced it. And you come out solving a few issues. You go in there and you have, what can I solve from this? And you think of things pop up in your head, and then the journey you take through that, there's a few answers there, Yeah.
And so I would bring that back, Dan. Like, what was your original intention?
I said it was to just know that I'm on the right path.
And what was your experience? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, a few things. It made me think about parenting, because my kids are turning teenagers. So that's a challenge now.
As we were just talking.
There's a challenge.
Yeah.
And so that was going on as like I was taking the harder approach. Just be a bit hard. I had to find a bit of a soft side when they were younger. Now I've got to come back to get my masculine back.
Okay, sure.
Put my foot, sort of say no.
Setting some boundaries.
That's the word. Yeah. So mate, it's allowed me to do that with my kids. Yeah.
Great.
And relationship stuff as well. I was single for 5 years, and it feels like I'm on the right path. So it's
great.
things I got from it. It was interesting.
And
Really interesting.
What about the ant stuff though? Stuck in the matrix and just working
just going back into reality. It's like, well, people that take ayahuasca or mushrooms or psychedelics, it'll be difficult once you know you have a few more answers to come back into civilization and work and just stick to that same thing. It's hard to explain. So working in a factory, for example,
Yeah.
those guys probably wouldn't be doing much. They'd be drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
It's a depressant.
Yeah.
If they eat the mushrooms, they would not be working in the factory.
Yeah, it can change things up, shake things up, right?
Who knows? It mixes things up, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what I think people are, that's why they're afraid. They want to suppress people.
Yeah.
You know, they don't want this out
Yeah.
because we'll make magic, paint beautiful art.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
and connecting more, with our true
and not
essence
just
and
with
expressing
everyone,
ourselves.
and with each other. You know, like they want to keep people fighting.
Yeah,
they want to keep people, sick.
It comes back to, Dan, what you were saying before around, like self-regulation. Like if we could connect with ourselves and heal ourselves and work on ourselves, the world would be a different place because we would have a lot less addiction. We would have a lot less crime. We'd have we wouldn't have as many wars, right? We wouldn't have people hurting each other and harming themselves, right? Because we'd be able to regulate ourselves. So it's one of the greatest tools that we can do is to come in and understand ourselves and work on ourselves and regulate our emotions, because then we're creating or contributing to a larger collective of people that are more harmonized.
We have better relationships.
Yeah.
Better parenting.
Yeah.
It's so much better.
Yeah.
So I hope you do well, really.
Oh, thank you.
You know?
Yeah.
And I don't have you back on. We're going to keep in touch anyway. I've got to do another.
You were going to do another spinal energetic session.
Energetics.
Yeah,
Yep. I did mine.
Yeah.
And I wasn't releasing as much. That's all right. I get it. I actually got out of there really tired.
Yeah, you said
the next day too.
Yeah.
So I'll continue. I'll give it a go.
Yeah, well, sometimes the body, and that was my experience too. My body was very, I was in a freeze response, and your body was quite the same.
Yeah.
Because the body doesn't know what's happening to it, right? And it's something different. And so maybe my default and your default to things is a freeze response.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel safe to express. And that is what your body needed on the day, to just sit there and be still. And there were still responses, there were still subtle responses, and I could still pick up things from your body, but your body's just not ready yet to connect in deeper and then release.
It's holding off.
Yeah, but that's protective for you, right? Because that's what's kept you safe. So listen to that. Like, your body is wise. It knows what it needs to do. And everything that your body did on that day was exactly in line with what it was supposed to do.
Looking for the next one. All right, let's go for some lunch. You want some lunch? You hungry?
Sure.